Hi, this is Jeff from Wing Family Nursery, and I want to talk a little bit about the difference that seed starting might make when you're starting seeds. Earlier this spring, I started, we do a lot of seeds, and I started by making a mix. This is a mix that I made up myself. And I used composted pine bark and I screened it so that it was quite fine. And I added vermiculite to that mix and, just a little bit of peat moss. And this is what I came up with. And it looks like a really good mix. It's screened fine, so it doesn't have any big material in it. It drains really well. There's a little vermiculite so that it should hold moisture. And I thought that we were really going to come up with a great seed starting mix. But in the end, we really had difficulty with plants. They just didn't grow. Everything germinated okay, but you can germinate a seed in a wet paper towel. So germination wasn't the issue. When the plants started growing, they just got to a certain point and stopped. And we really had trouble with the seed mix. And so I ran an experiment to see if this mix, if it was the mix that was the problem or something else. We wanted to know if a better quality seed mix would really make that big a difference. So what's sitting here is a bag of, this is called Espoma Organic Seed Starting Mix. I bought this on Amazon. It was $12. One of the reasons I liked it, it said it included mycorrhiza. That's a beneficial fungus that helps plants to grow. I won't go into that in this video, but this was supposed to be, it had very good reviews, and it was supposed to be very good for starting plants. $12 I thought was a little expensive for this size bag. But we really needed to know if what we were doing was working or not. So we did a trial on how we did this. There's a tray over here. I'll pull around so you can see. We took pine bark, my mix here, and everything on the left in this tray is made with the pine bark compost, and everything on the right, these seeds were all started with this Espoma Organic Seed Starting Mix with a mycorrhiza in it. This tray, a lot of these things in here are slow to germinate, so it doesn't tell you a real lot, but I wanted to show you that the growing conditions were exactly the same. We put plants side by side in the same tray, under the same lights. They all got the exact same amount of water. We scrubbed the trays real well before we started everything to try to get everything as identical as we could. And then we started seeds. So this particular tray, most of the things germinated quite slowly, but I'm going to show you some things that did better. We'll start with, and we did a variety of plants just so we could get a good cross-section of what works well and didn't. The first thing I'm going to show you is basil. That's basil that's in the new mix, and on the left is basil in my pine bark mix. And you can see they both germinated well. Both plants are growing and they seem to be healthy. But if you look at the size difference here between the ones in the seed starting mix and mine, there's a significant difference. The basil plants here are certainly much bigger. More importantly, the true leaves on these plants, you can see that there's 4 leaves here. They've sprouted their first set of true leaves. And you'll find that with most of these plants, they've set the true leaves on, where these have not. You can see just a little bit of a start to this. But most of these are not getting, or very slow to get their true leaves. And so I found that to be pretty significant. That's the basil. The next thing is poppies. These are California poppies, and it's something that didn't grow at all for me earlier this spring. And again, the new mix is on the right, and my pine bark mix is on the left. You can really see a significant difference in this. If you look at these, they're quite spindly. They just don't look healthy. They almost look like they're dried out, and they're not. The mix is moist. They've not dried out, but they just don't look very healthy. And now if you look at the same thing in this organic seed starting mix, you can see how much more growth is on them and how green they are. This isn't a commercial for Espoma, or, if I'm saying that right, or any kind of seed starting mix. I've never used this before. I just wanted to try something to see what the difference would be, and it is really remarkable. The next thing is marigolds. I kind of did a combination of annuals and perennials just so we could get a good idea of a cross-section. Here's marigolds, and again on the left is my pine bark mix that I thought was really going to be good. I thought it'd work great. And on the right is the seed starting mix that I bought online. Again, you can see these plants look healthy, but there's not a lot of growth to them. They're all under lights. There are setting true leaves on them here, but the difference between that and this is really remarkable. These seeds were all planted at exactly the same time and in the same tray, same lights, same amount of water. So there again, you can see how much better that seed starting mix did. Probably one of the most remarkable things I found was tomatoes. I really struggled with tomatoes. They just would not grow. I'm gonna show you these one at a time. This is in my pine bark mix, and this is how my tomatoes looked this spring. They all germinated fine, but they just wouldn't set true leaves. They'd get this first set, and we just couldn't get any more growth out of them, and they would sit here like this, and they wouldn't die, but they wouldn't grow. It's very an unusual thing. I hadn't had that experience before. Now I'm going to show you the ones in this seed starting mix. These are both, by the way, the exact same seeds. It's a Brandywine tomato is the variety, and here's the same thing in that seed starting mix. It is a huge difference between those plants, and you can see the growth that's on these plants. I couldn't believe how much difference. This is also, the time period is, I think we're at exactly 2 weeks now. I'm shooting this video on a Sunday, and we seeded everything in these trays 2 weeks ago on a Sunday. So there's Brandywine tomatoes, and you can see again a really significant difference in the growth. Let's see what else have I got here. I've got 2 more things to show you. These are forget-me-nots. Again, seeded 2 weeks ago, and you can see what's happened. That's in my pine bark mix. And they all look fine. They look healthy. There's just not a lot of growth to them. And in the seed starting mix, here's the difference. And again, it's really significant. The plants are just 3 times as big. There's just much more growth in the seed starting mix. So it's pretty evident that what we were doing with the pine bark, well, it looked good. It just didn't have the nutritional value that it needed. And I just didn't do enough to add anything to that. I did in the plants we grew this spring. I did take some Jack's plant food, try to amend these plants once they got going a little bit, try to feed them some fertilizer, but it just really didn't make any difference. They just didn't want to grow. The one thing that there's not an incredible difference on is zinnias. Here's zinnias that were grown in my pine bark. They seem to like it just fine. They're 2 weeks old. They're doing good. And here are the ones in this organic potting mix. And this isn't a video about organic, whether it just says that on the bag. Espoma is the brand name. I don't want to try to make you think this is specifically about an organic mix versus non-organic. This is pine bark, and I guess that's organic as it gets. It came straight off a sawmill. We get this stuff by the truckload. We screened it and just took the fines and then mixed some vermiculite and a little peat moss into it. There's not a huge difference in the zinnias. There is a difference in the color. These are a much lighter color in the pine bark. These are a darker green. They do have a little additional growth. They're a little bigger. They look a little stronger and healthier, but that's one thing that it didn't make as big a difference. But I'll set the zinnias aside and go back to the tomatoes. This is something tomatoes are heavy feeders. They need a lot of nitrogen, and you can see how much of a difference there is in tomatoes. So I thought this might help somebody if you've been struggling growing things from seed. Take a look at the mix that you're using. I figured in a 72 count tray, this is a 1020 tray with this size. There's 72 cells in that tray. And at the price that I paid for this particular mix, and there are others that are similar, it's about $0.05 a cell in a 72 cell tray to fill these with seeds. We did a trial there. There's a lot of plants in here. We tried to put the exact same number of seeds as well in each one of these cells. And most of them we did about 4 seeds just so we really got a good idea. We wanted more than 1 seed in each cell so you could get a better idea of what was going on. So I'm convinced that the type of seed mix you use is of a huge benefit. There are some similar things out there. This has mycorrhiza in it, and I think that's probably very beneficial for the roots. As these plants get a little bit older, I'll start pulling them and kind of checking the roots and see what kind of roots they develop. And we'll keep this trial going for a little longer, but it's pretty clear what works. So I hope that's helped somebody out. Again, I bought this on Amazon. I'm sure there are other similar things. Read the reviews. Some of the reviews mention germination a lot. I wouldn't pay any attention to that. You can germinate seeds in a wet paper towel. And we found germination pretty pretty even for all of this in both of these mixes. Germination was not a lot different with any of them. It's just a matter of the growth is much better with a better potting mix. So hope that helps you out. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment. Subscribe. This is our first video, so I don't know what you're going to subscribe to yet, but we'll have more to come.